Italy is in political turmoil and all about how best to spend money to get out of the massive mess caused by COVID-19. And because of this disagreement, the government's lost a coalition partner, and that threatens a general election and even more instability. This is Roundtable. Hello from me, David Foster. The question is, how can a country with the seventh biggest economy in the world and so badly hit at the start of the pandemic find a way out of this latest crisis? The government of Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte was left struggling to avoid collapse by the withdrawal of a minor partner in the coalition. Former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi and his Italia Viva party have questioned Conte's plans for economic recovery. The European Union has agreed to invest $920 billion to help the 27 nations deal with the impact of COVID-19. Italy is expecting about $253 billion in grants and low-interest loans. But there is disagreement about the spending plans. Italy has the second highest public debt in the European Union, and its economy was already struggling before the pandemic. The political infighting in the middle of all of this is likely to infuriate ordinary Italians as they grapple with a second wave of the virus. Conte may have survived Tuesday's crucial Senate vote, but the battle may not be over. Will Italy's government become a victim of COVID-19? Well, I'm very pleased to say that we can welcome to this round table out of London, Lorenzo Codogno, visiting professor at the London School of Economics, former chief economist at the Italian Treasury. We go to Italy, to Pisa to be exact next, where we say hello to Edoardo Bressanelli, assistant professor in political science at the Sant'Anna School in Advanced Studies, and then to Brussels, where we see Ignazio Corrao, an independent Italian lawmaker and member of the European Parliament. Welcome to Roundtable. This is a question for each and every one of you, but I'll start with Lorenzo, because if anybody knows about politics and money, it's somebody who's worked in the Italian Treasury. What kind of state is the Italian economy in right now?
Well, Italy was affected quite badly by the pandemic, as you certainly know, and the pandemic is still on. Pretty much in line with the UK, probably a bit less nowadays, but still heavily affected. The economy probably contracted by about 9 percentage points in 2020. We don't have the final numbers yet, but the order of magnitude is that one. And the start of 2021 is going to be quite difficult because there is still lockdown in several regions in Italy, and probably the first quarter will be a weak one as well. Meaning that probably the overall performance for 2021 won't be particularly brilliant either. So the least that Italy could hope for in this situation is to have a crisis, a political crisis. As you can expect, yeah, as you can imagine, not all Italians fully understand what's going on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's come at a terrible time, but which particular sectors of industry have been hardest hit? Travel, tourism, manufacturing, or is it just across the board?
Well, as you can expect, I mean, manufacturing is still in good shape, but services have been hit hard, particularly hospitality, particularly travel, transport, the usual sectors that have been affected around the world by the pandemic.
Let me go to you, Edoardo, and pick up a point that we heard just then from Lorenzo, which is that the Italian people, by and large, are probably not really in favor of some kind of political mess at the moment, don't like what they are seeing. So the support is possibly behind continuity, is it?
Well, that may well be so. And indeed, the crisis and the reasons for the crisis, the specific policy issues raised by Matteo Renzi in particular, are not so easy to understand. The broader political context may be easy to spot for seasoned observers of Italian politics. But there is one point which I'd like to make on this issue, and it is the fact that Italy has gone through from crisis to crisis. And in a way, normal politics in this country has been suspended for quite some time. It's not the first time where Italians have been told that voting is not the right solution for them. We may go back to 2011 when Monti then became the head of government. And it is true that whatever the reality of this point, there seems to be another rule in Italian politics. And the rule is that to keep power, you may well use a good crisis.
Okay, so what we're seeing at the moment is people playing politics in the midst of absolute chaos. Ignazio, let's bring you into this conversation, because what I don't quite understand is, I mean, this money is coming to Italy. The European Union has promised it. What are the real areas of disagreement about where and how it should be spent?
I actually agree with what Professor Bressanelli was saying. This is probably more than a real political crisis. This is just a play of power between political players that need to use the crisis and also the money coming from the pandemic in order to set a position of power inside the government, inside the majority, looking at the next elections and looking at their political life. So this was probably the reason why Matteo Renzi did what he did, and I'm absolutely sure that he didn't act alone. Probably it was just the main player of a broader act, of a broader design that they may have in mind in order to.
I think I get this point, but what I'm really trying to get at, excuse me for butting in, what I'm really trying to get at is, where do these differing parties think the money should be spent? What is the main disagreement, even though they may be playing politics here? Where do they differ about where the money should go?
That's that's a good question, because the point is not on where the money that should be spent, because there haven't been very big disagreement on plans, because we've seen plans that I mean, they're not really, there's not a big visions on the plans that the government has been talking about on the recovery plans. And generally speaking, all the different parties in majority agree more or less on how they have to be they have to be spent. But
okay, so I'm going to interrupt you again. I'm going to interrupt you again. I'm very sorry for this, but I want to hear from Matteo Renzi, who took his cabinet members out of the government and forced this crisis to some extent. This is what he said about the funds.
We will never be complicit in the greatest waste of money we could have in Republican history. If we want to move forward, we have to move forward with a project. Now it's up to the government to decide, and not to us, because we have only told the truth.
So, Ignazio, there we have Renzi saying that there has to be a specific project. Are you saying that that isn't the case?
I didn't see Matteo Renzi fighting for how to spend this money. The point is who is going to spend this money and when is going to spend the money. But I don't see in Italia Viva different projects or different goals than the Democratic Party and the Five Star Movement or Leo, the other parties in majority. They more or less agree in not big visions, and they're talking about projects that already aid the Italian government inside. So I don't see the how problem. I see the who problem. So who is going to spend it, and with what sort of power and influence inside the majority and the government. So I see a power fight during a big crisis for citizens. This is my idea.
Crikey, Lorenzo, it sounds as though a great many different parties are looking after their own interests and not the interests of the people of Italy.
That is part of the story, I think. First of all, I think it's the difference is not about substance to some extent. it's about procedural issues. Renzi is criticizing the prime minister because he feels that he hasn't really respected full democratic procedures, and there are bits and pieces. Moreover, the prime minister tried to push through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan through the Cabinet of Ministers in December. It was just a brief outline, and that's not the good stuff. So I have some sympathy with the position by Renzi on some specific aspects. The problem, however, for the country is whether this is a good moment to open such a crisis, and I think it's not.
Isn't there a suggestion that he could go and get a loan from the ESM, have to pay interest on that loan? And he's saying this would allow him, if he were able to do it, to spend the money more wisely, but he would be turning down a freebie from the European Union. Why would he want to do that?
One of the issues that Renzi has raised is the use of the ESM credit line. As you know, the ESM proposed to extend credit to countries to be used for healthcare spending, and that was back in the summer of last year. Now, I think it was absolutely essential for countries under some difficulties to draw from this credit line as quickly as possible, because they would have saved money in terms of interest expenditure because it's cheap, the line, but also it would have reduced the amount of issuance, and therefore it would have probably reduced the government bond yield spread. Having said that, by now the situation has improved, the interest rate have gone down, so the savings on interest rate has reduced substantially. So I think at the end of the day, you can still spend money on the healthcare by using the normal budget. This is, it's still lending. Okay, it's not the free money. It's not about grants. These are loans. So effectively, you can still get the same money by basically issuing bonds in the market. It's going to be slightly more expensive, but the end result will be similar. Now, why is Renzi pushing so hard? I think it's about to become late for the ESM line to be really such a critical issue. My personal view is that Italy should have used the ESM credit line 6 months ago, or even more. But at this stage, it doesn't really count that much for the future of Italy, for the future of public finances, and not even for the spending on healthcare. So it's really a political issue more than anything else.
Edoardo, do you want to talk about how when people play political games, they can backfire? Who could be the casualties of all of this?
It may backfire. The question is for who and when. In the short run, Renzi's move doesn't seem to produce very high political returns for him, because Conte survives with a different government, but Renzi is completely out of this government. His ministers have resigned or have been made resigning, and therefore Renzi has lost office, is very weak electorally, and may shout from the opposition, but that's really what he can do. The question for Renzi is what happens in the medium to the long run. If there are no elections and this government proves to be as weak as many observers expect it to be, not having a political majority, but relying on the support of some isolated senators, well, Renzi from the opposition may gain an advantage, and there the question of the electoral law becomes crucial. Yesterday, Conte, in order to get more support and a larger majority, promised to reform the electoral law and have a proportional electoral law. A proportional electoral law, paradoxically perhaps, may favor Matteo Renzi, particularly if there is no threshold or a very low threshold. We shouldn't forget, Matteo Renzi is worth slightly more than 2% electorally, according to the polls. With a proportional law, if he increases a bit his support from the opposition, well, he may well count for the next round of government formation, whenever that moment will be.
I'm going to take a look in just a moment at what any future government might look like and what it might mean for the European Union. Of course, that will be speculation. But right now, let's hear from Giuseppe Conte on what he thinks the right thing to do with this money is.
We immediately took up the challenge of transforming difficulties into opportunities. Aware of the structural deficiencies of our country, we laid the foundations for a decisive relaunch of growth, creating an environment more favorable to private investments, more inclined to research and innovation, more focused on the construction and strengthening of skills.
So there we hear from Giuseppe Conte. Ignazio, I know you're not from the same political persuasion as him, but he's talking about research, innovation, private investment. He has a plan. Does the rest of Italy think it's a good one, or not necessarily so?
If we analyze the words, the plan is okay. It goes in the right direction. He thinks about environment. He thinks about innovation. He thinks about infrastructures and modernization of the country. Yes, but these are words. If it comes to concrete plans, we haven't seen yet how the Italian government want to spend this money, if they really want to spend it in a way that change the course of events in the next future. That's the real problem. And there is a second problem that is about democracy. Let's remember that Italy is a republic when the power is exercised by the chambers. So it would be important that members of the Senate, members of the Chamber of Italy could have their word on that and give a concrete option and opinion and political vision of how to spend this big sum of money that is not going to happen many times in the next years. So if I have to judge the words are right, but we should analyze the facts and the plans that we haven't seen yet. I hope, as an Italian citizen, to see a very good plan that can change the future of my country. Of course, I hope that, because I'm not sure that there will be another chance to change things in the next future.
Okay, Lorenzo, let's look into the near future, if you like. And I read an article this morning which talked about Ursula von der Leyen's worst nightmare, which would be La Liga and Matteo Salvini, former prime minister, getting back together with a Forza Italia, so two extreme parties. Is that at all possible, given Italy's propensity for changing governments and propensity for minority governments as well? What do you think?
There is still a big concern about that, because we have seen with the previous government that a kind of anti-establishment, Eurosceptic government can do a lot of damage, and the relationship between Italy and Europe could deteriorate fast, and which would be very, very bad in the current situation, given the huge package that Europe has approved and is hugely supportive for the Italian economy. So I think that risk is still present, but as the previous speaker said, it's unlikely now that Italy will go to election pretty soon. This government might actually manage to survive for a few months. Then you have the so-called white semester, that is 6 months before the election of the president. So effectively, the next possible date for elections is spring next year. So I don't think it's so imminent. But if we believe opinion polls, if we go to elections today, probably the center-right is going to win. It's going to win big, because with about a 6 percentage point lead in the polls, the majority in parliament might be quite substantial. So I think, and the problem is not the center-right itself. The problem is that the current center-right is led by nationalistic and Eurosceptic parties, very much leaning to the right. And that is, in my view, still a problem. Now, you can still expect these parties to become more and more mainstream over time, as it happened with the Five Star Movement. But so far, I don't think this is the case. So I think the risk is still there, but it's not an immediate one.
Let's throw one of your points to Edoardo here, which is that the relationship between Italy and the European Union, and they must be looking at Italy and wondering what on earth is going on, could become more strained. Do you believe that's the case?
That may be likely if things precipitate politically. At the same time, I would like to use an image which was used by a late scholar of Italian politics, talking about the First Republic, the period going from 1945 up to 1992. He spoke about imperfect bipartisan, in the sense that there were two main parties, the alternation was not really on the table, was not really possible. It seems to me that in this Third Republic, we may call it, which is yet to come in a way, which is unstructured. But in this Third Republic, the dynamics of party competition resemble that imperfect bipartisan. There are two parties or coalitions, to say better, but on the one hand, they compete. On the other, this competition may not really come fully to the light, because one of the two sides, the anti-Europeans, would jeopardize, most likely, the international and European position of Italy. And therefore, you see the country elites coming together to make that possibility less likely, much less likely.
Okay. Ignazio, let me throw this one to you, and we're coming towards the end of the program, sadly, because I found it fascinating. To badly misquote Mark Twain, reports of my death are premature, and I've seen Italy written off as an economic and political case so many times. Do you think Italy can come out of this, the pandemic and the economic collapse, stronger?
I hope that I mean, we will come out with the effect of the pandemic very soon. I mean, the situation in Italy now is it's really difficult. I mean, there is lots of words, lots of things said by all the political parties. The people are confused, they're scared, and many have the real fear of not seeing tomorrow. So I just hope that all these months and might be a lessons in order to really use this money to recover fast and give opportunity to all people that in this moment are losing their hopes. And I mean, that's a responsibility of all of us from all parties and different perspectives.
Yeah. But Lorenzo, given what you know about the moment and given your experience in Italian politics and economics, is it likely that people will put their political ambitions and differences to one side to help the country rebuild?
Well, I think at this stage there is a massive monetary and fiscal stimulus that if it is spent in a decent way, it will actually stimulate growth substantially over the next few years. So my baseline expectation is for above par growth for a few years. Now, the big question mark is whether Italy will be able not only to stimulate the economy temporarily for a few years, but will also be able to enhance potential growth on a sustainable basis. And that is a much more difficult task, in my view. In other words, I think there is a reasonable good chance to see a decent investment plan for the future presented and implemented near term, but it's much more challenging to have structural reforms that could enhance on a sustainable basis Italy's growth. And that remains, in my view, the major challenge for this government, for any government in the future.
Rather quick one, if you would, to end the program. 7th largest economy in the world. I think I'm right in saying 3rd largest in Europe. Can Italy maintain that kind of position in the long term? Could it even go up the ladder?
Well, I think Italy needs to address some structural issues first. And as I said, I'm not particularly optimistic at this stage, given the weakness of the current government, and that Italy will be able to tackle these fundamental weaknesses. Having said that, there is certainly a chance to see stronger growth over the next few years, which might actually kickstart a period of, a better period, a better outlook for the country, might stimulate domestic activity, might stimulate new activity, new ventures, and could enhance productivity. And that could
I know it's very
eventually
difficult to give a short answer when it comes to the economics and politics of a nation, but
so
thank you. You did summarize it rather nicely. Look, appreciate it very much. From London, from Pisa, and from Brussels, we thank all three of you for your contribution to this program. We will keep an eye on this one here at Roundtable. Thank you wherever you happen to be picking up this program. You can do the same with many of our past programs on our YouTube channel. That is TRT World Roundtable on YouTube. From me, David Foster, for now. Goodbye.